Shalom, everyone. Welcome to another episode of In a Second Thought from Hadran. The tractate of Zevachim is dealing with the different sacrifices, the different details, worship of the Beit Hamikdash, and part of the discussion has to do with blood. And for example, in page 35, we hear that blood with which the soul leaves the animal, i.e. that's spurts immediately upon slaughter, is called blood. But blood with which the soul does not leave the animal, i.e. blood of exuded, is not called blood. The discussion around blood is using a very strong pasuk, a very strong verse, saying for the soul of the flesh is in the blood. And that's why we need to make a distinguish between what is not blood and what is a blood. When we look for the source of this psukim, of this pasuk, we turn into Sefer Vayikra, Leviticus, and we see that the Torah makes sure that we understand that we may not eat the blood. And if anyone of the house of Israel or of the stranger who reside amongst them partakes of any blood, I will set my face against that person who partakes of the blood. God is saying, I'm going to be so angry that I myself is going to punish that person. I will cut the person off from among kin. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have assigned it to you for making expiation for your lives upon the altar. It is the blood as life that affects expiation. In other words, the hanefesh hu adam, adam hu hanefesh, because life is in the blood, I want you, when you slaughter the animal, the behemoth, in the Beit Hamikdash, to throw the blood on the altar, and that will be mechaper, that will expiation on you. Don't eat the blood, but pour it in the altar, and that would be the kapara. And therefore I say to the Israelite people, no person among you shall partake of blood, nor shall the stranger who resides among you partake the blood. And if any Israelite or any stranger who reside among them hunts down an animal or a bird that may be eaten, we have animals and birds, like chickens and others, that are not being sacrificed on the altar. We have 7 different animals that are not animals that being sacrificed, like cows and oxes and sheep and goat. There's 7 different animals that are kosher that we can slaughter at home and eat their meat. Same thing with birds. So if you use those to eat and you don't bring them as a sacrifice, the person shall pour out its blood and cover it with earth. It's not a sacrifice on the altar that you pour the blood on the altar, but you should cover that blood, not let it spread around you or keep it in a bucket or something. And the reason is, for the life of all flesh, its blood is its life. Therefore, I say to the Israelite people, you shall not partake of the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is its blood. Anyone who partakes of it shall be cut off. And we can already hear that there's something very, very meaningful or very heavy even here, that the Torah repeats itself time after time after time. Do not eat blood. And you can either use it to be poured on the mizbech for kapara, or when you eat animals outside of the mikdash, you need to cover it. What does that mean? And the life of flesh is in blood. So the pshat, the most basic understanding, of course, is, when we don't have blood anymore, we die. And as long as a person has the blood in their body, we're alive. And a sign for not living is when all the blood comes out of the animal. But the word nefesh, we know, can mean a soul. Okay, and that's why we're gonna see both the different explanation and even and philosophy of the korbanot are trying to understand that idea that repeats itself not only in Sefer Vayikra, but we also hear in Sefer Devarim. We hear in Sefer Devarim, "Rak chazak levilti yechol adam," but make sure that you do not partake of the blood. For the blood is the life, and you must not consume the life with the flesh. Okay, do not. You have to first you have to separate the blood from the flesh and never eat the blood with the flesh. But this verse in Devarim starts with the word chazak, but make sure that you do not do that. You have to strengthen yourself not to do that. And Rashi is explaining why do we need to be strong for not eating the blood? And he brings two opinions from the Midrash. And it's very interesting. The first opinion that Rashi brings is usually the one that he supports. But when he brings another opinion, it means that there's also something to the other opinion. So says Rashi, from the fact that it states be strong, make a special effort, you may learn that they had a predilection to blood. They were eager to eat blood, to the eating of it. It was therefore necessary to state be strong. This is a view of Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda is saying the Torah is telling us be strong and don't eat the blood because there was some kind of a lust and a desire to eat the flesh with the blood. But there's another opinion, the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon, the son of Azai, however, says, Scripture merely intended to caution you and to teach you that what great an extent you must strive to fulfill the divine commandments in general. If as regards blood from which one can easily keep aloof since one does not long for it, if it felt it necessary to insist on a strong effort on your part when forbidding it to you, how much the more is it necessary for you to make a great effort in keeping other commandments? In other words, Rabbi Shimon ben Azai is saying it's a kal v'chomer. It's easy to not eat the blood because we're disgusted by blood. And therefore, that if the Torah says, be strong not to eat the blood, it means that even when it's easy to you to keep a mitzvah, be strong in other mitzvot, it's a kal v'chomer. Even if for an easy mitzvah, it says chazak, so more for the rest of the mitzvot. It's exactly the opposite of Rabbi Yehuda. So we have two opposite explanations. One that says there is a lust, a human lust to eat the blood with the flesh. And the other one is to say, absolutely not. Human beings are disgusted by flesh. The truth is that also be the reason why Rashi is bringing it as the first option. It's because most of the understanding that we have in the biblical commentary and in Jewish thinking later, we'll see that they strengthen and they go after the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. They support his opinion. But let's see another thing in the book of Devarim. It says, do not eat the blood. You must not partake for the blood in order that it may go well with you and with your descendants to come. For you will be doing what is right in the sight of the Lord. It sounds that has two options here. Either do not eat the blood because if you follow what I said, even though you want to do the opposite, good things will happen to you and your descendants. But maybe it also means that there's something imminent, specifically in the blood, that I would even say there's something mystical, that if you don't eat the blood, good will come to you. You'll be living your life in a better way. And two different thinkers, Jewish thinkers in the Middle Ages, approach that question of the not eating blood. The one is Maimonides, the Rambam, and the Rambam in the book of the Guide of the Perplexed is saying the following: blood was considered impure to many by the Tzaba, which is a pre-Islamic pagans, but also the ones that preceded them. and still they ate it because they thought it was the food of demons. Whenever anyone ate it, he could then cooperate with the demons. In other words, the Rambam, which continues his general idea about sacrificing, saying that God gave us korbanot in order to sublimize our desire of idol worshiping. So, but he did it in a kosher way, in a purified way, with his own directions. And indeed, the Rambam says there was a pagan costume to drink the blood because they thought it was a way of connecting to demons. And there were people for whom eating blood was expulsive in their opinion. In the other hand, says the Rambam, as we also saw in the eyes of Rabbi Shimon, that there were people, even in the pagan world, who were disgusted by the blood, or even thinking that it was impure. And they would slaughter an animal and catch the blood in some vessel or in a ditch, and they would eat the meat of the slaughtered animal near its blood. And imagine that by doing so, that the demons were eating the blood, which is their food. In other words, they did not want to eat the blood, but they kept it in a vessel, imagining that they're feeding the demons, and that's how they protect themselves. Both ways we understand from the Rambam that the reason for the Torah to say, do not eat the blood, because that's what pagans do, and cover the blood, because pagans did not cover the blood. So, and this whole idea of not eating blood and covering the blood is coming to distance the people of Israel from that pagan behavior surrounding the blood. The Ramban, Nachmanides, who comes after the Rambam, quotes what the Rambam says. And he adds, and he's like, I know it makes sense. I mean, there is something for what the Rambam, Maimonides, is saying. But when we read the verses, as we saw before in Vayikra, in Leviticus, the Torah gives us a reason. It doesn't say do not do that because this is the custom of Avodah Zarah, of idol worshiping. The Torah gives another explanation. It says because the nefesh is in the blood. And that's why my Nachmanides is saying, because God creates all lower beings for the need of man. Since he alone among them recognize his creator. In other words, the Ramban starts by saying people are in a different level of understanding, of recognition of their lives, and that they were created by God. Nevertheless, he did not originally allow them to eat anything except plant life. And if we remember, in the beginning of the Torah, we are not allowed to eat animals. And only after the flood in Parashat Noach, God permitted them to slaughter animals, because their life is for men, because it was okay after Noach already slaughtered an animal, brought a korban from an animal, and because all the creatures, everything here was created from human beings. So God said, okay, now you can permit us to eat animals, but the life within them should provide atonement for men and be sacrificed before the blessed one, and not be eaten, since no living creature can eat life itself, because all the lives belong to God, as do the lives of men. In other words, the Ramban is saying God permitted us to eat the animal, but he wanted us to remember that all living creatures belong to God, and therefore to have the life which is in the blood, the blood that symbolizes the life in the animal as well as it symbolized life in human being. He directed us and forbidden us to eat the blood or to cover the blood. Sefer HaChinuch, which again is later than the Ramban, when he wants to understand the mitzvah of covering the blood, he says it is from the roots of the commandment, because the soul is dependent upon the blood. as we said about the prohibition of blood. And therefore, it is fitting for us to cover the soul and to hide it from the eye of its seers before we eat the meat, as we acquire a bit of cruelty in our soul when we eat the meat and the soul is spilled in front of us. In other words, the Sefer HaChinuch is adding something of what the Ramban, the Nachmanides was saying. It's like he's saying that, and when we do that, even though we allowed to eat an animal, to eat the flesh of an animal, it's a bit of a cruelty to sit down and eat the flesh when the blood spilled next to us. And we need to be more refined in our midot, and more gentle in our behavior. So to distance ourselves from this cruelty, says the Sefer HaChinuch, we must cover the blood that symbolizes the end of the life of the animal. Very interestingly, in the Midrash of Bereshit Rabbah, they said that the human soul has 5 different names: Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Yechidah, Chaya. Okay, and they bring all the places where we learn from that this is another way of saying the human soul. But when we use the nefesh is the dam, nefesh is the soul. In other words, the blood, I would say it's somewhat of a materialistic aspect of a spiritual soul that we have, and that's why we have to be so careful with it. But speaking about blood, it is important to remember that we have many stories that has to do with blood in our Chamisha Chumshei Torah. And it's interesting to look on these different places. I did not bring all the places, but just those that give us an understanding of the spiritual symbolic aspect of blood in our Torah. Okay, and I start from the first place in Bereshit Dalet, the story with Cain veHevel, very sad story. We start humanity with a brother killing his brother, but God here doesn't tell Cain, or before it is forbidden to kill. And even after Cain murders Hevel, God does not tell him it is forbidden to kill. Okay? Because we are still in a process of teaching humanity what's good and what's bad. But what we have here is God telling Cain, then God said to Cain after he killed, "What have you done? Hark, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." When we say that the blood can dmei achecha zoakim elai min ha'adama, there's a kind of a life in the blood, and you shed the blood of your brother, and the blood is still warm and yelling, to tell everyone around it, especially to God, what just happened. Another obvious story is with Noah, and there, the first time where humanity hears that killing another person is one of the worst thing to do, after Noah and his family leaves the ark, God is blessing them and be fertile and increase and fill the earth, and the fear of you will be all over. But he also says, that's where he says for the first time, "And creature that lives shall be yours to eat." Now, obviously, it's a kind of a lesser level in the stage of humanity. If the first stage of Adam and Chava was they walked in the garden together with the voice of God, and they could eat everything natural in nature, except for animals, and then they were thrown away from the garden. And now Noah is coming out of the ark after the flood, and God understands that you need to let people eat meat, and he says you can eat all that is alive, but you must not, however, eat flesh with its lifeblood in it. It starts here. The forbidden to eat the blood starts in Bereshit, not in Vayikra. And it's regarding the permission to eat the meat. And when God continues to emphasize the idea of blood, God says, we can understand from it that God says, I'm willing to let you eat animals and not eat their blood, but maybe that will refine and suppress your need, your desire, or to kill people. And that's why God goes on and to say, but for your own lifeblood, I will require a reckoning. I will require it of every beast, of men too. Will I require a reckoning for human life, of every man for that of his fellow men? There's a difference, says God, between killing an animal to eat and between murdering another person. And that is not going, I'm not going to be quiet, when you kill other people. And then, one of the strongest verses that we have in Torah, shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam damo yishafech ki b'tzelem Elokim asa et ha'adam, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for in God's image did God make men. And with that, I think we conclude to say that the blood is life, and we have to be very careful with the blood of other people. And even though we can eat animals, we still have to be very careful of the blood of the animal and remind ourselves that it's an aspect of life. And we are expected by God to remember that all life are significant in the eye of God. I'm just going to quickly go over other examples. The brothers dip Joseph's tunic in blood, and that's a sign that he's dead. One of the first makkah in Mitzrayim is makat adam, and all the Nile was turned into blood. The blood plays another role in coming out of Egypt when God is commanding Moshe to tell the people to put the blood of the sacrifice of Korbanot Pesach, to put it on the doorpost. So the meshchit, so the God is going to skip and pass over their houses. And blood is also what Moshe does in what we call brit Haganot, when he reads the entire Torah that he brought to the people of Israel, and then he throws and he dashes and took the blood and dashes it on the people and said, "This is the blood of the covenant." Blood of covenant, it's not only in Ma'amad al Sinai. The blood of covenant is also the dam of the brit, of circumcision. It's also the dam of Taharat HaMishpacha, of the purified laws of the family. Very, very significant. Blood is also how Moshe anoint Aaron and his sons to become Kohanim. And the last one I want to share is coming from Parashat Kedoshim in the book of Leviticus, where the chapter there speaks about Ben Adam lechavero, mitzvot that has to do between individuals or between people. And there it says, do not deal basely with your countrymen. Do not profit by the blood of your fellow. I am Lord. I am the Lord. In other words, God, in certain mitzvot, God is saying, remember me, remember your creator. There are things that you're doing that are disgracing the image of God in you. Lo tilech lachil, do not gossip, but also do not see your brother, sister in a death situation and not helping them. But it also can be not only a death situation, every situation that you find your kins, your fellow men and women, which is dangerous for them. Don't let them lose their life. Sometimes it's even metaphorical, spiritual, or mental life. You want to know what it is to be a human being that was created in the image of God. It means that you care about the life of your fellow men and women. Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. Ki hadam hu hanefesh.